questions about God and the Bible to a theologian. With me today is Dr. Bennett Lawrence.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and trying to answer some of them at least.
So today's questions are from Diya. She's a friend of mine and she has sent some questions for us to answer today. So the first question is, why are there no information about dinosaurs in the Bible?
This is a very important question. One thing we have to remember is that Bible is not a descriptive book which describes everything in history, geography and physics and everything about this world. Bible talks about spiritual aspect for our spirituality and also things about God, who God is and about God's ways. So these are the important details that we have in the Bible. But apart from that, we also have several other details. History is there, and we also have physics, and few other details are also there. But we cannot expect Bible to give answer for every other detail that we see around us. For example, dinosaurs. And one thing that I want to point out is that if you just look at the book of Job, chapter 40, and verses 15 to 23, you have this description of an animal called behemoth. This behemoth is very interesting animal. The description, if you just look at those things, and few scholars are saying that this is very similar to Brontosaurus, and Brontosaurus is a dinosaur, right? And so this Brontosaurus is described here in the Bible in a very different term. It's called behemoth. And also in Job chapter 41 verses 1 to 34, it talks about Leviathan, another animal, and which is very closer to Plesiosaurus. So you have these animals which are described very differently, and they come very close to that of the dinosaurs that we know of. So there is a possibility that we are using different terminology, names of these animals, and which are described in the Bible, but still Bible doesn't describe all the other details that we know from our age, and we got to be a little more careful in reading those things there. But we are happy that few animals very similar to that of the dinosaurs is also there in our Bible.
Thank you. Thank you, Diya, for this question. So the next question from Diya is, what happened to John after Revelation?
Thank you very much for the question, and I think it's a very interesting question as well. We know that after the book of Revelation, after John wrote the book of Revelation, we know that from Tertullian, and who was a church historian from the 2nd century, he describes how John the Apostle was put inside a boiling oil, and then he just came out of it without any hindrance, without any problem, without any wounds, and so he just came out of it without any problem, it seems. And it was the greatest miracle that Tertullian is saying, and he is writing about it. It's from 2nd century that we have, early 2nd century. We also have from Irenaeus, another church historian, who is coming from 180 years AD, and which is about 2nd century, the late 2nd century, and he says that John was martyred in Ephesus. And so we know that from Irenaeus that John died in Ephesus.
Thank you. And thank you, Diya, for this question. Shall I move on to the next question?
Yes, please.
What happened to Elizabeth and Zachariah after John the Baptist died?
The thing about Elizabeth and Zachariah is that when they gave birth, they were in old age according to the book of Luke. What we mean by old age in those days is that at least they would have been around 60 years old, 60 to 80 years old. If Elizabeth was 60 years old and if Zachariah was a little older than that, maybe about 70 years old, by the time that John the Baptist was about 30 years old, by the time that he was baptizing Jesus, they would have been at least 90 to 100 years old. And life expectancy was not that high at the time. people in their old age die little early. So there is all the possibility that they both died, little later after they gave birth to John the Baptist. Maybe when he was 20 years old or at least 15 years old at the time. So we don't have any details about their lives, but most probably they died when John the Baptist was very young.
Thank you. And thank you, Diya, for this question. Shall I move on to the next question? So what happened to Joseph when Jesus died?
Thank you, Diya, for this question. And when Jesus died, we know that he was about 33 years old, 33 and a half years old. And if Joseph got married around 30 years old, when Jesus died, he would have been around 63 years old. But if you notice in the Bible, we only have the details when Jesus was about 12 years old. Joseph was alive and he took him to the temple, and then they came back. We know those details from the book of Luke chapter 2. But we don't have any details after that time. We don't have any details about Joseph in the Bible. So there is all the possibility that Joseph died in a very young age, most probably about 50 years old, something like that. But another important thing that we need to take into consideration is that in those days they did not have this high-tech medicines. They did not even have this antibiotic. Even a small cold, even a small fever can cause serious damage for the people. Right now, if we have fever, we can just go to the doctor and then we can just take an injection and we can live longer. But in those days, even a small fever and even some toothache, it can create serious problem because they did not have good antibiotics and then good medicines. And because of that, so many people would just die young. And if some accidents happen, if some infections or sickness happens, it would be very hard for them to live longer. So it is one of the reasons that I believe that Joseph passed away when he was young, most probably 45, 50-year-old. It is one of the reasons why we don't have details of his presence when Jesus passed away.
Thank you. And thank you, Diya, for that question. Thank you for answering all our questions. And thank you, Diya, for sending your questions. If you have any questions for us to answer, please write them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.